Welcome to the Cherry Picker, the horror movie podcast where we like to kill people, but not really. I'm your host, Zach Cherry, and with me as always...
Helen. Eddie of Edward is Truth.
And today we are talking about Candyman, released October 16th, 1992. This is the 30-year anniversary.
Oh, wow.
And incidentally, another Clive Barker movie back-to-back, you know. That was not intentional. Right. It just happened that way.
I don't think anybody's going to complain. Like, another fucking Clive Barker movie, and it's more... Candyman?
Yeah, we need more Clive Barker. I need more Clive Barker. You know, I've never seen, what is it, like Nightbreed? Is that what it's called?
I did a long time ago, and I remember I liked it. And I don't remember anything about it. I need to watch it again. And there's even, I think, a Scream Factory release, right? I know there's an Arrow release. Yeah.
Possibly. Yeah. I don't know. But,
I got to do much more deep dive. And I do have to read his short stories, too. Like, everything that they based these past two movies and anything else he's done.
I think just the fact...
get more of a feel for the man.
Yeah, just the fact that they are short... that's more like inviting for me to read, because I'm not a reader. I'm like, put it this way, if I'm already falling asleep while I'm watching these movies, which is by no like mean of like the movie itself, it's just I'm just incredibly tired when I start doing this. But just imagine me like trying to like open a book and then just like I'll probably read the same page over and over again. So knowing that, you know, his stories are short, they're novellas, you know, that's
they're bonbons.
I can or Cinnabites. Cinnabites.
I saw the meme.
I
ordered Cinnabites, and there's the Cinnabites.
Yeah, there's the Cinnabites. Just tiny little, you know, offerings that I can digest so much easier than just having to sit there with a full book in front of me. But as far as I understand, the Candyman story, which is not called Candyman, what's the name of it?
Now that you asked me, of course, it goes right out of my head. And it was in the opening credits, too.
I know.
I should know.
But,
we should both know.
Yeah, it's very different from the movie. Like, they greatly adapted the story to
American.
To Americanize it, but also just, like, adding in the... like the racial aspects, because the original Candyman story was more to do with class.
Absolutely.
Just like the class system in Liverpool, where it took place. I don't know who's going to find it.
We're both looking for that. I'm just looking at names. Like, we're both. Are you on IMDb? Because that's where I am.
No.
The Candyman and Clive Barker's original story. They didn't say the title. God damn it. But he had an unruly red beard.
Like he was not a black man. He was more of just like a. I mean, just the way they describe him, like I would picture him more of like the vagrant from the end of, or like throughout Hellraiser. But with a red beard and jaundiced skin and like a patchwork jacket or something like that. I don't know why.
Yeah, that's not sexy at all. Like, there never would have been a franchise if that would have been the Candyman.
No. Could you just imagine them turning Tony Todd away, just like, you're too sexy.
I know.
You can't play this role.
I mean, that's my favorite line of the movie that I just said to introduce myself, just because it's just like, strap in, folks. Just let him. The way he just pleads with her, be my victim. I'm like, well, who would say no? Dear God. Just be like, all right.
Well, I think that's one of the things that makes this movie work so well. It's just the chemistry between those two. Obviously, Virginia Madsen, who is phenomenal, and Tony Todd, and you know they took ballroom dancing lessons and like horseback riding, I believe. Just like did all this stuff together before
just to get acquainted.
And I don't know if it was on like the instruction of Bernard Rose or Clive Barker, or they just kind of did that of their own volition. But
well, I know Virginia Madsen and Casey Lemons did the same thing, just to kind of like, seal their friendship, because they didn't know each other well either, and they knew, every actor's inclination, particularly on a film where your time together is so limited, you're going to do nothing but reap the benefits of any moments you can share with each other, just to get a sense of some kind of shorthand that you would have on camera, because nothing reads more loudly than like a subliminal level of a connection on camera, than that.
Yeah, but I mean, like those two, just in terms of like their on-screen chemistry, even though they're not playing lovers, I would like watch 2022 cinema if like they released a rom-com starring the Virginia Madsen, Tony Todd. It was just like, it's like
heartbeat.
She goes on vacation in like New Hampshire or something, and he runs a bed and breakfast or something, and they fall in love and they go for walks on the beach, and there's like no killing or horror, but I just want to watch those two romance each other. Right. I would be down for that. Like, that's
like Notebook style. Yeah. Like who's that horrible author that writes all those beachy
absolutely
romances?
Yeah. And even bring back Xander Berkeley, who plays Trevor. He can be like the third wheel, like that's her husband in the movie, and they're
her loveless marriage. Yeah. Yes.
But he tries to win her back, and then she ends up going to Tony Todd.
Also, do you want to laugh? Because I just found the name of the short story just by looking at the writing credit for Clive Barker.
I saw what it is, but tell everyone.
The Forbidden is the name of it. So sorry, folks. I have no notes for this because I as I sat watching the movie, I was just kind of like, what am I even going to write? Like, I
don't even know. I don't even know what I'm going to say at this point.
I mean, sometimes it helps to like give me some direction, or if there's a point I absolutely mustn't forget to make, or sometimes just I don't know, it just makes me feel organized.
I like the spontaneity of the Virgo in you. I like the spontaneity of the event of the podcast. The only time I ever made notes was like the other week when we did the kills, and the only reason I did that is because I had grievances that I needed to air, and there were so many that it's like I was gonna forget them. But otherwise just go with the flow. That's what I say. So speaking of
just a guideline. It's just a guideline.
Speaking of flow, do you have a synopsis you would love to share?
I do. Yeah. Yes.
Let's hear it.
All right. When Helen Lyle bases her thesis on urban tales and contemporary myths, she visits Cabrini Green to research further about a local legend, namely a one-armed man who appears when you say his name 5 times in front of a mirror. Of course, the genuine fear of the people with whom Helen interacts does nothing to rock her disbelief. But after ignoring multiple red flags while investigating in the various places he's been rumored to appear, unspeakably violent and fatal occurrences start taking place around her. But was it all just because she called on the Candyman? I was really careful not to look into any reflective surface when I said that, because I'm still like shaken. Mm-hmm. I can't.
Have you ever done that? Have you ever looked in the mirror and
No. I mean, look at me. My whole people who are watching this can see my whole body language. My neck shot up and I went all rigid, and I'm just like.
I mean, it's the same thing as like would you open the lament configuration? The Pandora's box sort of thing. It's like, that's like kind of the theme of like Clive Barker's stories is there's always some sort of object or forbidden, funny that it's called the Forbidden, but just something that it's like the the apple in the Garden of Eden, of just like the forbidden fruit of just like don't have this, and the people who tempt that, who are funny enough, like so far have always been women, or at least because you have Julia in Hellraiser, Helen in Candyman, and you could even say Kirsty as well because she opens the box.
Sure.
Too. So it's so just an interesting parallel to like more like biblical stories with like what Clive Barker has written.
Yeah, I'm really glad you brought up that word biblical, because that's literally what occurred to me while I was working today. I just had some thoughts swirling around in my head, because I think it's impossible for me to watch this movie and just put it down. I always carry it with me a little bit for at least the week that follows. And one of the things that occurred to me, because I'm glad you also brought up the apple and Helen, because what never occurred to me before, I've always enjoyed Helen's ride. I've always sympathized with her and empathized with her. And this time, I felt more than anything her, pride isn't the word, her recklessness, I guess, and a kind of like invincibility or carelessness. I mean, all of them kind of like figure in, and I'm just not succinct enough to like come up with one word, but just her recklessness in the face of everything. I just kept getting images today after screening it last night of Helen seated with the little boy and him just telling her, like, I told you, that Candyman will get me. And, and you said that everything was going to be all right. And now everything isn't all right. She's like, and everything about her tone in Virginia Madsen's performance just told me, like, listen, I know so much more than you, and there's nothing to be afraid of. I mean, I know your life better than you do, and I've spent less than, a day with you. So you can trust what I say, even though everything that I've told you up until this point has turned out, has gone awry, and now you have to live with the aftermath. And then even thinking about her, even just the way she said, I'm not going to look in any reflective surface when I say it, when she says Candyman, the way she does it so boldly and just brashly, I mean, it's not even brash. I shouldn't put it that way. But I mean, just like she doesn't care, she's not taking it seriously at all. That's what I'm trying to say. Yeah. And she just kind of throws it away and just like, hey, and she says it into the mirror when Casey Lemons doesn't say it anymore with her the fifth time. And I was just like, or even it just kept occurring to me. I thought about her sitting with what's the name of the British guy who wrote the paper on Candyman, and she's going to actually
Professor something or other.
Yeah,
he's in he shows up again in the sequel.
This is why I have notes so I can remember names, because I'm terrible.
You just keep talking, I'll get it. I'll find it.
Okay. Yeah. So that guy.
Yeah.
When he's in there, he's like, so how are you going to bury me? Because she's just like, actually, let's say his name's Lloyd. I don't remember. It was like, actually, Lloyd, we're going to bury you. He's like, how are you going to bury me? And she just kind of sits there and doesn't say anything and just smokes, I think. Yeah. And she's just kind of, and just kind of like shaken, like in this way, like I've talked the talk, but I cannot walk the walk because I really haven't done as much research as I should have. I just want to show up this man. Everything is about like this man and all of the men in the school's kind of like estimation of me. And I understand when you work in the world of academia, the other people with whom you work, their opinions matter. And especially if there is something that is like kind of decipherably different about you and your aesthetic versus everyone else, like, your sex or the color of your skin or anything like that. I understand why other people's perspectives has to matter to you, but it really kind of, I don't know, it bothered me that she wasn't backing it up with any work. I wanted her to be more prepared than she was, because I just felt like she was, blowing up, it's kind of like, just like, just overflowing with this pride that she hadn't quite earned yet. And it bothered me. And it never bothered me before. I was like, Helen, do your research, girl. Back it up. Again, the textbook Virgo in me. Yeah.
Anyway, are you done shitting on her yet?
No! Of course not!
Well, no. I understand what you're saying, but I'm going to... Well, first of all, Professor Purcell is the character's name. And...
Purcell, okay.
I don't see it the same way you do. I see it more of just like, not as recklessness, but competitiveness. Because I never see, like, I don't think that she's looking for these people's respect. I never got that from her at all. I just saw it as more of just like, I'm gonna, like, I want to show everyone else that I can do the same thing better than you. So I don't think it's more so just like specific figures in this school that she's, you know, trying to impress, but more so just, if anything, like put them beneath her. And I agree in the sense that, you know, she wasn't fully prepared. It was just like, we're gonna bury you. Like, she had this idea, and in all fairness to Helen, she was on the right trail. She just didn't have all of the pieces yet, but she knew that whatever she was moving towards was going to have it. She just had no idea that there was this long-standing history of Candyman that this guy knew so well that he could just recite over a cigarette in a restaurant, just be like, oh, you know, that reminds me of this one time in 1890 when, you know, like, yada, yada, yada. But, you know, because we see this in so many, because, like, in the scene where she's with Bernadette and they're driving there, and Bernadette is obviously, like, very hesitant. She's like, I don't think we should do this. Yeah. And Helen's like, fine, let's turn the car around right now, and we'll just go back and we'll write the same old, like, regurgitated stuff that everyone already talks about. So I never saw it as a way of just, like, her wanting to gain their respect, but just be like, we're better than you, you know? That's what I got from her. And just like, and again, maybe like her actions are reckless in a way, but it's just like, we're also dealing with urban legends, you know? It's just like most people would go into a situation like this and they would say to, like, the little boy Jake and just be like, yeah, like, Candyman's not a real thing. Like, these were the actions of this gang member. And for all intents and purposes, I mean, we'll get into that of just like, what is reality and what is sort of this, like, urban legend come to life sort of thing. But she even, like, the first conversation she has with Jake, because he you know, he talks about being scared, and she says, like, I don't scare easy. You know, and she, like, it made a point to kind of like she paused and, you know, had to say that, because, you know, there's, not only did she go there the first time, but she kept going back afterwards alone. So clearly, like, she felt comfortable enough doing that that, you know, it wasn't, when you're determined enough, and especially, like, if you have, like, kind of like a competitive spirit, like, you're not gonna, you will throw that caution to the wayside, because, like, her kind of, like, underlying goal and everything was to make complete this thesis, and quote unquote bury Professor Purcell.
Yeah, but I mean, I think the only thing is, either way, whether it's about competing with them and being better than them or earning their respect, whatever it is that's, like, motivating the action, what it is it's in reaction to them, and I think I find less power in that. I think I don't, something on about my previous viewings always kind of, like, intuitively. Just kind of, not intuitively. I mean, I just kind of, like, blindly just kind of, like, accepted, well, she's my protagonist, so, you know, of course I want her to go after this. There's no movie if she doesn't go after this, and I want to find all the answers that she does as a moviegoer. But for the first time, I started to realize she could have had a little more regard for the people who were inhabiting the spaces that she was moving around in, and also, like, just the fact that, like, another motivator between her and Bernadette is the fact that she's like, do you think that, you know, the boys would, like, would stop and not go in and go back? And she's just like, yes, you know, like, absolutely. She's like, exactly. So it's like, so they would go back, so we need to do what they wouldn't do. And maybe one person's determination is another person's bravado, and maybe I'm just feeling,
I mean, I have I don't know where this turnaround on Helen has come out of, like, nowhere. but 2 points to that, to what you're saying. The first one, and kind of, like, I guess, like, the main thing that sort of is connected to more of, like, the social themes of the movie, is the fact, because you mentioned that, you know, she's going into this these places with no regard to of the people around her, and that very much has to do with sort of what essentially brings upon Candyman. What summons him is the fact that she kind of appropriates this legend that belongs to the people of Cabrini Green and arguably Green, like belonging to like African American culture. So she kind of goes in there, and she says it herself, like that she's very self-aware of this when she's just like, like people get murdered in the projects all the time. Like a white woman goes in there and gets beaten, and then all of a sudden like every cop in Chicago goes down there. So she, something that's always been like a fear for these people is ignored on a daily, but as soon as she kind of shines light on it and makes it about a white person having been involved in this thing, then it becomes a white urban legend, or just like an urban legend about a white woman. So it no longer, she almost takes the power away from her. And even though that they say, or like Candyman says in the movie, just like, you didn't believe in me, or, it's almost like Freddy Krueger, of just like, you made the people not believe in me because you made it like, it was all an urban legend. It was all fake. So now I have to come back and shed innocent blood. So that's one reason of just like, what came about, but also the, the fact that she did in a way appropriate this, this legend to make it more of an academia thing of just, like the white people in white colleges and whatnot. But the other thing that's, you haven't, or, we haven't touched upon here is the fact that this is a very layered movie in a way that you can watch this in so many different ways. And I think that's why this is one of my favorite movies, because of that. And there's, by the end, when Helen sees on the wall and there's just like the paintings and everything, and there's the painting of her with Candyman back in the 1800s, and it says, "It was always you, Helen," to kind of intimate that Helen is the reincarnation of his lover. So her, like Helen's drive throughout the movie, you could see it as being this predestined thing where she was always going to go down that path regardless, because she was reincarnated for that very purpose. That all roads in Helen's life led her to that exact place and time and exact moment, like in Chicago, in Cabrini Green, to go to that place. So, like very well, like, someone, if Helen was kind of like on the same level as her peer, like Bernadette, and it's just like, no, like, Bernadette is obviously speaking things that are like common sense of just like, this is logical. We should not go in there. It's dangerous. But Helen, who's like clearly, if we're looking at the movie from that aspect of just her being this reincarnation, that she would, kind of have this cloud over her head that would block out all of that logic and be like, no, it is my life's mission to go there and do this, because this is my calling. So that's how I see it, and that's how I can excuse any sort of, not that I ever saw any fault in anything that Helen ever did or found problems in it or was bothered by it, but that is me just burying you. So your move.
Well, I'm not trying to bury her, but I think it's interesting that I'm really glad that we did Hellraiser and Candyman back to back, because one thing I'm realizing with, there was an argument to be made, we discussed in the last pod, about like Julia being the female protagonist of Hellraiser versus Kirsty, like it's all about who you align with, and we all know who I aligned with in that movie. But the thing is, I hadn't watched it from that vantage point, and something about the point that I'm at in my life made Julia so much more nuanced for me than just kind of like a heavy, female antagonist. And this time, seeing Helen, who I had always seen as my protagonist, my heroine, my through and through person, and I still think there are heroic acts, particularly by the end of the movie, by her. And I don't just mean when she gets the hook, but prior to that. But it was just, there was more room to just kind of like root for her. There were things to scrutinize. There were things to question. There were things to go, to even like intimate the way you are about like this destiny and everything, which actually, while you were saying that, I just felt this cloud of sadness over myself that if that was her destiny, oh my God, I would have loved to have followed. Like if it was her destiny to be reunited with him, but it was to be reunited in this way, and her destiny to become an urban legend, what would that say if she were to pass the torch onto the next legend killer, shall we say? You know, like whoever's going to follow whatever they would call Helen. I don't know what she would be called, but there would be, you know, like this mythos that surrounds her story, you know, that like maybe college professors all whisper about in corridors or something.
Well, I mean, that's kind of like by the time we get to the end of the movie where we see Trevor then repeating her name into the mirror 5 times and then her coming alive to haunt him in a way. And so now I'm just thinking, like, does that mean Trevor's the next? Like, don't say Trevor 5 times in the mirror. But I mean, like, we can talk about the new movie a little bit of just like how they address the events of the original, because in that movie they do a lot. Not a lot of time, but they specifically bring up the fact that, you know, this incident with Helen had happened, and it's written off as just like, you know, this woman went crazy. She went down to Cabrini Green several times, and she beheaded a Rottweiler and kidnapped a baby and yada, yada, yada. And that's all they really know about it. There was no proof that Candyman existed. And I kind of see that as her, because I mean, like, I agree with you in a way that like Helen kind of like goes into this place and she does all this shit and she kind of like comes out of it at an advantage, not really like too concerned about the people that you know have to deal with it on a daily basis. And that sort of becomes her punishment, because by the end of it she's kind of like forced to go back in there and right the wrongs that she didn't intentionally do. She didn't intentionally set out to do anything bad, but she kind of recognized, okay, you know, I did some shit that you know wasn't kosher, and now, you know, I have to sacrifice my life in order to save it. And she did that, and I kind of that's what I see like at the end when you have the funeral procession of, you know, all of the people of Cabrini Green come in there and they throw the hook in the empty slot or plot, as you call it. Brave, yes. And because I always see that it's for them, it's sort of like a recognition that they know what she did, because they believe in Candyman and they believe in like the legend of Helen and everything that happened, and they know that in order for everything to kind of like go on and be copacetic and, you know, for life to continue as it is, Helen needs to become this urban legend herself. That in a way it's just like, you know, like you're now like cursed in death to be, you know, this person that, you know, people will whisper your name and you'll appear in mirrors and kill people. Like that's your legacy now, just like Candyman's. And it's almost like they were paying their respect, because it's just like, you got dealt a really shitty hand here, and we can never speak about this again. And we see that in the new movie, you know, without going into like too much detail, because we see Anthony's mother come back, and she exactly, like she's just like, I didn't want to tell you this, like this is like, because, you know, everyone had to basically just bury it and never speak of it again. So I definitely see like Helen as, you know, like her fate was kind of necessary, and it was shitty that happened to her, but it's just like that's why like I think she's such a great and interesting and unique character, because she doesn't necessarily do anything wrong, or at least like purposefully wrong. She's just kind of like, I mean, you can look at it just like it was fate, but also in a way that just because of that fate, you know, it just like it had to be her. She had to kind of go through these things, and there was nothing that she could have done otherwise. Like no matter what road Helen took in this story, it all would have like ended up bad for her. You know, she could have stayed in the hospital and then she would have been committed for the rest of her life.
Sure.
As you know, this just like the way that she went out was like the most freeing way for her to become this cursed ghost to murder people for eternity.
And that's when I really admire, actually, like her kind of aggressive motivation to plow forward is when, in the face of her world basically crumbling apart around her, she chooses to. Candyman sets her free so he can basically frame her. She knows this, so she climbs out of a window and goes into another, window in the same facility and knocks out a nurse and dons her garb so she can just escape, and goes back to her apartment. And by that point, because she has absolutely nothing to lose, she kind of has no power, yet all the power in the world, because when you have nothing to lose, you can do literally anything. Yeah. You may as well. And so, and that's why that's where I'm still completely like bonded. I'm like fused with her in that scene when she goes back to the horrible, hideous pink apartment, and from the movie on, because everything is about just, I guess maybe just kind of like putting her her aggressive forward mobility to kind of accessing her inner warrior and everything like that, to either, ironically enough, change the way fate seems to be curbing her, and yet walk into a fate that she may not even know is awaiting her to become the next urban legend. But the thing that saddens me again is just I have nothing but curiosity and questions about what is Helen's perspective once she becomes that bald, burned scalp woman with a hook, once she becomes this supernatural Helen. I just want to know, has she gotten closer to seeing things the way Candyman sees them? And is that why she can find the exquisiteness in the pain, and that, again, that blurred line between pleasure and pain. Yeah, well, I have nothing but questions, and we never get any answers to any of that, because
I don't think we need the answers to that, but I was just going to say that's like another parallel to Hellraiser, because the Cenobites were all human once, and they don't have the memories of the time that they were human. So I think it's, once you've kind of crossed over that supernatural threshold, you lose yourself and just like who you are, and there's just like the kind of like the essence of the like evil spirit and energy kind of takes over and decides who you are. Because I don't think that even like Candyman, Daniel Robitaille, the original character, that he was obviously like a very like virtuous person. Like he's not somebody who would go out there and willingly kill people. Like there's innocent people in this that Bernadette, who's just like just wrong place, wrong time, and that's kind of like I think the theme of like most of the victims in this movie is just like they were in the wrong place at the wrong time, because even like the psychiatrist, he's just basically doing his job, and it's just like, can you call him now? Or she says that like, I'll call him now, not realizing of just like what's gonna happen, and then for Candyman to kind of like come up behind him on the chair and like stab him with a hook through the back. So I don't think that like Helen, like afterlife Helen really has any part of who she is left, other than maybe trace memories, or just kind of like maybe the anger of just like the fact that this, I mean, very much like Daniel Robitaille, like the original Candyman, it's just that like there's this vengeance of just like something that happened to him that he did not deserve, because arguably you can say like Helen didn't deserve what she got. So that's kind of like, it's not so much like a personal vendetta as much as it's just like it's a curse. It's like like a movie about a curse that even if you think about like The Grudge or whatever, it has nothing to do with like the personalities of the people. It's just the energy of the evil thing that happened to them.
And yet, interestingly enough, there is an incredibly personal streak, because one of the things that we know is motivating Candyman, you mentioned like the psychiatrist and Bernadette and the other people who die in his wake, or who were made to think, the people of Cabrini Green and all over the place are made to think have died, are sacrifices to like pave the way for his legend to be reborn, because people don't remember him, so they have to. I can't live if nobody remembers me. I can't come back if no one's afraid. Sorry, Freddie, but so we know. See, that's where my question comes from. Is just kind of like, and I think. There, without giving away too much about the direction of the franchise lately, I think they're kind of paving the way to create motives for different legends, shall we say? Yeah. But that's what puts the question mark over my head, because we know what Daniel Robitaille's Candyman is motivated by. So I just want to know, what is Helen motivated by?
So do you think that there's going to be another Candyman movie coming out?
Oh, I hope
because there's
so.
nothing has been.
I know there's nothing on the horizon, but there better be.
It definitely, like, I know, like the new one, I thought it was great, and I know like a lot of people kind of shit on it. I agree with one criticism, and we'll eventually do a podcast on the new one, I'm sure. But it did feel a little rushed towards the end. And that's, it's been a while since I've seen it, but like if I did have one criticism, I could remember. But the one thing that it really left me with after seeing it is like, I want more. I want to see more. So I would love for more like Candyman sequels to be told, because I feel like that's a franchise where you can't, I mean, like, Candyman 3 notwithstanding, but I feel like even I liked the second one. I thought that was effective, even though it's it's kind of got that problems of just like mid-90s like really shitty like jump scare horror, but I think that it's still kind of it tells like a really good story, and it tells like a different kind of like aspect of like social issues, especially like with race, that I think that every Candyman, with the exception of the third one, has sort of earned its right to exist in a way, if that makes sense. So I definitely would be up for more stories, and I loved that Virginia Madsen at least had a voice cameo in the new one. It was just like the recordings of what she did, but I do want to see more of just like what became of Helen, because Helen is kind of like, she's part of that legacy of these figures. So even though she's not a black man, she's still, grouped in with them just in terms of like the mystical elements of everything. Also, you mentioned the pink apartment, and all I could think of was like Pepto-Bismol pink. But the only time I've ever seen like in a movie apartment painted that color was in Batman Returns with Selena Kyle.
Oh my gosh, the sad pink, the dreary pink.
Yeah, I think this one was like maybe a little bit brighter, but it like had that dreariness. I think just because it was more open, because they were still in the process of painting, and it was very bright in there. But we've mentioned this before. Stacy is like one of my favorite characters in this movie because she's so fucking ridiculous.
She is. and I remember we've spoken previously and kind of had a shared reaction to her. I don't know what is with me these days, but for whatever reason, I could not stand her this time. I mean, she's entertaining as hell.
Oh yeah.
But I all I could think was just like, oh god, like I don't like anything about her in the greatest way. Like I mean, just like even when the way she's like is she coming down off a ladder, or just turns around and just sees, she thinks she's talking to Trevor, and then she sees Helen. Yeah. She immediately just kind of shuts down and just.
She can't even. Yeah. Well, she's basically the antithesis of Helen, and it's just funny that like that's the. I mean, I don't know like with the actress who played her. I don't know anything else she's been in, but it's like everything she does is so. like over exaggerated in the movie. Like I noticed in her first scene when Helen comes to the lecture hall and all of like the hanger honors at the end, like I guess like what that Trevor says, or like the cream of the crop of his students, and everyone is like really friendly and like to Helen and just like hi, and you just see Stacy and she's just like leering at her, just like just
side eye.
Yeah. And
like
Helen knows
so
it.
Incredibly guilty.
Yeah. Helen knows it. Well, Helen says like she could barely look me in the eye, and just like, well, she was looking at you up and down, but it just everything, like even her walk away, like just like with like the mom jeans and
yes,
like,
the 90s. No, I mean she like I said, she's entertaining as fuck. But and the thing is, like, I love the way her performance just kind of draws the eye from that moment, because I feel the same way Helen does when she's looking at this young thing in the mom jeans or no mom jeans walking up to her husband, and doesn't he like touch her or something? Like he strokes her arm or touches her shoulder or something, and I'm just like Helen, get in there, and she does.
Yeah.
And then you just see that leer as she steps away and everything, and I'm so glad that she brings it up with her husband.
I mostly just love at the end because like she's like, she's got the big knife and she's like, let's make a salad, and then you just see her preparing dinner and she's just like, fuck this, like, she is not having it. Just like slams the fridge open.
Oh, carving her own hand, like slapping the knife into her palm. Yeah. Oh my god.
Well, I mean, like if anything, like the the revenge of for Helen is that she's killed Trevor, who's likely going to be like committed for that murder, or like assumed it's gonna be her because she's the only one in the apartment. She's murder weapon or not, she has a knife.
Screaming with a knife in her hand.
I mean, if Helen is like convicted of murdering a Rottweiler and her friend without any I guess like evidence in terms of like I'm just thinking of like crime scene, just like DNA or whatever.
Circumstantial evidence, yeah.
Well, everything is circumstantial, but it's just like, they would just go in there like, oh, well, there's been murders in this apartment before, and it all happened with a blonde woman, writhing around with a knife, so it must be her too, like.
Yeah, maybe the end goal. See, I would watch that movie where Helen just spends the whole movie doing to Stacy what Daniel Robitaille did to her. Oh my god, that should have been the sequel. I would have. Oh my god, I'd be watching that right now. I would have watched that all the time. But unfortunately, that's not the case. No. I just get to play with my headcanon for that one. But also, we need to talk about Trevor. Dear God. Okay, first there's the suspicion in the classroom. That's bad enough. But the next huge strike for me against this man is the jumping on his wife while she's sound asleep in bed and mounting her. And you can hear in Virginia Madsen's like response in her performance. She's like, I mean, there's this like primal grunt that she lets out. Like it's almost like just says everything about that energy is no, And then when she sees him and slaps him, and he's like, hey, babe, and I'm just like, fuck you, no, that's not fun, Stanley. Fuck off. You get in the couch. You are grounded, mister. I don't know what relationships are like, but I presume it's just like.
Well, I just like upon watching it again last night, I definitely like misremembered that scene because I guess I forgot like how pissed off she was at that point, because it's just like, what time is it? And just like, but she was almost like, she was like super frightened, which is funny because she says she doesn't scare easy, but there is a part of her that is kind of terrified of this whole thing, because this comes right after, or at least several hours later, after she calls Candyman, and they do that beautiful shot that I love where it pans out. We're just like, we kind of leave the mirror and we hear like her and Cassie Lemon's just like laughing about everything, and it's just like we've already like moved hours in time, but it's just like we're still with the mirror, and that's kind of like I think that entire shot where it kind of comes out from the mirror and then like shifts over to the bedroom, and then that's where Trevor pounces on the bed. And I always thought
it's a great jump scare.
Yeah, I always thought that maybe that was like Tony Todd, because it was they do a thing where it's just like a quick cut of like whoever the killer is, but then it says, "Oh no, got you." But no, it is Trevor because it's all one unbroken shot and you can see him. But total dick move, and Trevor does really suck in everything. Like just liar, adulterer, like cheater. Fuck that guy.
Well, to the point where he's her phone call when she's incarcerated and whatnot, and. Is anyone ever surprised that number one, he's not home, and that number two, she knows exactly where he was? Yeah. Like she even asks him afterwards in a way that it's like, I know what's going on, but you better tell me because I'm not going to wrench it out of you, which I totally relate to in my relationship history.
Yeah, and did you? I think we talked about this before, but the female cop who is like kind of like the one that gets her to undress and then is there with her phone call is I forget the actress's name, but she was the Jason Goes to Hell, the Joey B, the diner owner, proprietor.
I'm looking for it, but no, she's great.
Yeah. But she's like plays such a more serious role.
Rusty Schwimmer is her name.
Yeah. I've seen her in so many things,
just like,
but she's one of those like character actors that always pops up in everything. And this came out right before Jason Goes to Hell, so I guess she was like very active in horror movies in the early 90s.
Yeah, I hope she's doing the work in the convention circuit. And probably having just like fan after fan ask her, could you ask me to lift my left breast? In as monotone a voice as you can, please. Oh, because that's another thing. Okay, that was another thing with Helen. Like, and it made me think about Clive Barker. Like we touched on it with Hellraiser. I was so perplexed, and I still want to have a conversation with him about like what are you saying about like temptation and seduction and following like your sexual impulses, if it's just going to get like punished, or if we are supposed to see it as punishment, or are we supposed to access the pleasure in ourselves? And that's what the whole Cenobites thing is about. With this, I had to wonder if what I'm perceiving is, and I would love to read the short story and see what Helen's like innermost thoughts are if we go into that in the short story, just to know what's motivating her, what's driving her forward. Like, is it more externally based? Is it about like beating the boys and being competitive, or is it about being drawn like to some kind of destiny or something inexorably to the end? But I just had to wonder, like, is this all punishment for her innate curiosity? Like, if she didn't pursue this, regardless of whether she was drawn to it or not, if she didn't pursue knowledge, like you brought up, again, bringing up the biblical aspect of like the apple, it was the tree of knowledge that they were eating, the forbidden fruit that grows off of it. And then once they ate from it, Adam and Eve, in the story, the leaves fell, and all of a sudden they could see their nakedness, and they knew sexual feelings, and they got to experience all that. Now, Helen's curiosity and her pursuit of knowledge is about this legend, and she ends up uncovering something about herself and something about a world like that she, far beyond anything she would ever have believed in with her very academic, critical brain. And I just had to wonder, like, is it again like just a natural inclination to pursue something? And is there punishment? But because there is this wonderful foggy line in this movie too, and in this story, between pleasure and pain, is it just about perspective? Is it just about, like, do you see it as eternal damnation being Helen in the mirror? Or do you see it as the full embodiment of your power, the full realization of the boundlessness of what you're capable of doing? You were so restrained by everything mortal in your previous life, the same way Daniel Robitaille was. Now that you are the stuff of legends, all you have to do is kill strategically if you want to stay alive, as it were. So that was something huge that occurred to me too. I was just kind of like, is it punishment versus pedestal? I don't know. I want to ask Clive Barker, so which is it? I really want to meet him now. Like, I'm so intrigued.
Yeah. Well, I'm interested because because he's back in, I guess, like he's producing the new Hellraiser, which should be out by the time this podcast comes out. But was he involved in the new Candyman in any way? Do you know?
I don't remember.
Yeah.
I mean, of course he gets a credit.
Oh, absolutely.
Because, he's the creator and everything like that. But
I don't remember
if he was credited as a producer or anything like that.
Well, because I've been going through all the Hellraiser movies, and I think it came to the ninth one,
yes,
Hellraiser Revelation, and I was just looking at the IMDb trivia, and there's a quote from him, because I guess like the producers of the movie said like, from the mind of Clive Barker, and he had such an adverse reaction to that he went on Twitter and he's just like, what the fuck? Like, this, not only did this not come from my mind, but something like this shitty wouldn't even come from my butthole. Like, of course he did. He just seems like one of those like very like unintentionally funny people, like, like John Carpenter,
yes.
just so like gets so like annoyed by stupid shit that it's just like he has no filter. So yeah, I think like he would be a great person to meet. And
absolutely,
and talk to.
And he's not credited as a producer on the new one, which is usually the kind of like, whether it's like a label only, just to kind of like get some kind of like prestige surrounding the project. They I guess they didn't feel like they needed it. Good for them, because they don't. But and also, I mean, it has largely kind of like departed. He does get credit, of course, the story credit for The Forbidden, but it's kind of departed from, I think, the thing he created in that short story, and especially like in the new movie, the most recent incarnation. It's really fully embracing the world of Candyman the film, and as far as I can tell, I mean, again, this is,
and it's very contemporary too. I feel like a lot of Clive Barker's work is, not that it's dated, but it's of a very like specific time, which like you especially see with like the Hellbound Heart, and and then again with the Forbidden, and you could be right. Maybe it was just like this is more of like a Jordan Peele production or a Monkey Paw production or
right.
whatever it was, but there's a lot of things I would be interested in, because I mean, in a way, like, because I mentioned how there was like a lot of layers to this movie, and like there's one thing that always bothered me a little bit, and it's just the fact that Helen, like when she was brought to the institution, we find out that she's been in there for a month, because they had her on Thorazine. He'll barely be able to sit up. That's the point. But, she's been completely out of it for a month, and it's because
nice pull.
Yeah, right. No, that's what I thought of, like when he's just like, we've had you on a heavy dosage of Thorazine. It's just like Michael Myers, But it almost, because like that then kind of like brings up the fact that Candyman has this baby, like baby Anthony, so clearly like a baby would not survive on its own for a month without any sort of nourishment or like care. So we're led to believe that Candyman has been taking care of this baby for this entire time, and I thought it would have been like a very interesting element, not necessarily that they had to kind of show that to be the truth or not, but just another thing that you could use as your own specific headcanon, had it not been an entire month, and maybe they just said it was like the span of like half a day that she was in there or whatever, like spent the night there. And then you could also kind of reason like, well, maybe Helen did do all of this, and she is, kind of like there is that part of her psyche that is capable of this, because there's the moment when she is in the therapist or the psychiatrist's office, and she says like, I might not be in my right mind here, like I might not know what's been going on with me, but I know that I would never be capable of doing the things that I'm being accused of doing. Yeah. So if they did have this, we did find out that she actually did murder the dog, and she took the baby and all this, it was like a thing that just came over her just like psychologically, and she did all this stuff, and it was more of like an unreliable narrator situation, not necessarily that they had to show that it was, but just like as a viewer that we could also kind of like bank that and be like, is this another way that we can look at this movie?
Oh.
So just I mean that we can't because of the fact that she's been in there for a month. So it's just like clearly she the baby had to be taken care of.
And we even go to the shot, that wonderful little kind of like flashing strobe light on.
Yeah, he's got the baby at like a rave club or.
Yeah, right. And he's just rubbing the cocaine on the baby's gums. No, I always thought it was just the candy. I always thought he just kind of like got some melted chocolate and just kind of like that's what makes the baby like go on his finger. And he just lived off candy for a month, I guess.
Yeah.
I mean,
not a bad deal. And like literally in like the apartment or like 2 apartments next door to like his mother, and nobody heard anything.
Nobody heard anything.
Nobody heard anything.
Well, Candyman knows how to hypnotise, like a full-grown woman. Yeah. So maybe like Anthony was under the thrall as well.
He is basically Dracula. Blackula, if you will. But well, because they even say like they
2.0.
They wanted to make that was like an important element of the character, and I think it's funny because I mean like that to me seems like why the new Candyman movie was not well received by probably a lot of forgive me for saying, but maybe like Gen Z viewers of just like, because I think a lot of people, as I've like kind of realized doing what I've been doing just in terms of like my content and everything, that like a lot of people have not seen older horror movies. Like people haven't even seen like every Halloween or anything like beyond the new ones to really know where else these movies had gone. So I think that there is this misconception of Candyman that he is kind of like this slasher figure. He is a Freddy Krueger, he is a Jason, and nothing could be further from the truth. So I think that based on like people's misconceptions of like what Candyman is, they would go and see this new movie and just this is more of like a psychological supernatural thing rather than just like full on like it's not some guy that just goes around with a hook and is like killing people because they call his name. That someone might just be like, well, that's not really what I was looking for, and that I think that was very important for like Clive Barker and Bernard Rose and then when they were making this movie, it's just like we want Candyman to be this more like refined figure, kind of like how they initially created Pinhead in the Hellraiser movies. Like he's not like he's not a like mindless thug. He's intelligent and articulate, and that's again another parallel with Hellraiser and Candyman. Is just like in the villains of just like their ability to come in and they are more refined and they are able to carry the movie in a more cerebral way that I think that it does work a lot more effectively for at least in terms of, I mean, not so much in Hellraiser because that kind of like went off into its own thing, but just to kind of like satisfy a franchise of many films that you can kind of carry a story on, and like we were talking about with making more Candyman stories in the future, because you do have characters like this who can fulfill a story.
And also telling them in an artful and dimensionalized way that not every horror franchise, once we start churning out the sequel after sequel after sequel, can honor, And it even makes me think about something Wes Craven said once that I think I brought up on the pod before, but just talking about like the things, the content that you continually have to keep reinventing or revisiting and like going into people's backstories and everything like that in order to propel a franchise forward and keep making sequels. He always saw it as because he's a very Wes Craven, the eternal like businessman as well as like artiste, would always see the lore getting spread thinner and thinner. He said, I remember he just felt like to the point where it's just this like paper thin thing instead of this like incredibly dense dimensional thing that you concocted out of like real life elements.
I mean, I'm just thinking like just because we talked about Halloween 2018 and Halloween Kills. We're, going to be doing Halloween Ends this month as well. And just sort of like how those new movies kind of like in a way that the other characters like put Michael on this pedestal of like, how they paint him into this like full on like urban legend sort of figure of just like this otherworldly being. And, obviously it doesn't work with Halloween in a way that it does with something like Candyman, where this is like, prime fruit for the picking of just having characters just kind of conjecture and hypothesize of just like, who is this? Who is Candyman? And, what is his legacy? Because it's like, he's not real in a sense of just like, what the real world and what is grounded in reality, but he's real in just the the way that people interpret him and the mythology of urban legends and everything. So that's why I feel like movies like Candyman 2021 are successful in terms of just like storytelling, because those are urban legends and people and figures in like horror that you can continuously tell stories about. Whereas like something like Michael Myers, as much as I do love a lot of the Halloween franchise, that's like a one and done. You can tell it like a good story with it once, and then everything after that, like you were saying with whatever Wes Craven's quote was, is just like it spreads thinner and thinner. No matter how hard you try, it's not going to get any deeper than how it initially was.
Well, that's why if they were to continue, because I would love to see, and I won't go into a lot of Halloween, because we're going to have plenty of time to go into that franchise and and all that later. But I'm sure I'm going to have a lot to say about that movie. But what I will say is, like, one direction I would love to see that particular franchise go in after it ends, because I would like to see more movies. That I'll just put that on the
absolutely.
table. But what the direction I'd like to see is just make your own movies. Just don't even have people know who he is. Don't have like historical characters or anything. Just have him be the scary shape that like passes around and kills people, and just scare us. Just scare us again. I would love that. At least as like a first step. Beyond that, I know you have to continue reinventing and like going, now what is the natural progression?
I think that's why. I mean, as much as I feel it's a very middling entry, Halloween 4 is very successful because it's like, it's the most basic that franchise has ever been. And I mean that in like a good way, because it just like understands that like, it doesn't need to be grandiose. Like we can just do a very simple story, and that's, what is the most conducive to this character. Obviously I love like when it goes like operatic with its camp value. And I'd say like, I think like the biggest mistake they made in that movie was, and people could argue with like whether it's a mistake or a plot twist, or was just kind of there for the convenience of being like a surprise, is just the ending of Jamie Lloyd with the scissors there at the end. But because that obviously that led them into the trap that was Halloween 5. So it's with a franchise like that, you can be like the best way to do it is to just be simple, just like simplify it. If anything, just like put it through, just add more water to it. That's the best.
Like just take out, because even in 4, like the most complicated thing that they add in with 4 or continue with 4 after 2 is the bloodline thing, and about the horror passing from Michael Myers into young little Jamie Lloyd and horror
it's just, but that's it, the new title, Halloween after Halloween Ends, Halloween from Concentrate.
The horror.
Or that. But yeah, with Candyman...
No, but I mean, just making it more random. Just allow him to kill random people and make that, because that element is terrifying.
Yeah, as long as he's the consistent, like, that's fine. But with Candyman, it's just like, it's the legend is like so much bigger than the actual like Candyman himself, that it's just like you can just go off on this, they could keep going for who knows how long. I mean, as long as they get good people behind each film. But that's one thing that I really appreciated.
Candyman. Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh my God. Yeah. No, and that's another thing is like they could literally go in so many directions and continue. Like it's almost like they've built their own. I'm going to try not to spoil things because people may not have seen it, but just any.
Listen, go see the movie. Right. Go turn off the podcast
and
watch the movie. It's been out for a while.
Yes, if you haven't seen Candyman 2021, watch it and come back because I'm going to say a spoiler. All right. So, no, just the fact that like there are multiple Candymen. I would love to follow any number of the stories that we get in that wonderful little kind of like puppet show that we get, the shadow puppet show that we get like in the end credits. Don't make an anthology, like enrich it, like make it a full movie, or give me one that wasn't even in there and just and continue like the legacy, like do. But I mean, they could go in so many directions.
Well, what I really like and that I noticed like in the original Candyman after seeing the new movie, and I'll just preface this by saying, you know, I've talked a lot about prequels in my I always talk about prequels and how I do not like prequels. You know, there are exceptions to that, and like especially rules, and I think that the only way that a prequel can be successful is if it gives you some sort of new information that allows you to see the original in a different way than you normally did, because most prequels don't do that. Most prequels just like tell you something that you already know, or that you already know the outcome of. I mean, like Texas Chainsaw: The Beginning, or you know, like Leatherface, or you know, the other prequel, or things like that. So there are, you know, I think that like something like Final Destination 5, which was like a surprise prequel, like that works because it did make you look at the first movie a different way. But I think that, not that Candyman has had a prequel, but you do have in the prologue for the new Candyman that you see the events taking place in the late 70s, I think it was, in Cabrini Green. And you kind of see the origins of the Sherman character, like the one, like, you know, the who has been haunting Cabrini Green for all this time up until now. Because when Helen goes into that apartment, when she goes through the mirror, she finds these candies that are wrapped up and have razor blades inside of them. And I was like looking at that, I'm like, oh, like this is a very interesting way that the new movie kind of linked it to this one, because for all intents and purposes, like the Candyman who has been haunting Cabrini Green was Sherman, because there is no Candyman in this movie in the 1992 original until Helen you know, does what she does, because when he appears to her in the parking lot, that's the first time Candyman actually appears. So the whole story is like Ruthie Jean and the kid in the bathroom. I attribute that was like actual like crimes of humans in the real world, like, or just what we find out is the guy who's like, we hear you're looking for Candyman, bitch, or whatever. The police are just like, no, it was definitely him. So you know, in a way, I think that what we see in the new Candyman of just like, because every time like people were complaining, well, that's not Tony Todd, like whatever it was, and it's like, no, because that was a different Candyman. We had Sherman, I forget his full name, but like Sherman was or was or whatever up until this point the Candyman who's been haunting Cabrini Green. So right. That had no kind of personal connection to Helen, and this goes back again to like sort of like Helen's destiny of just sort of, it was really like her connection to Daniel Robitaille that brought him back into the picture. That everything to do with, you know, the man who, you know, was beaten by the police in 1979 or 77, whenever it was, who handed out candy. When I see like the Helen find the candy with the razor blades and all that was everything to do with him. Whether those were like people that put those candies there as like sort of like tribute to him, or that was actually like what he left behind. Right. or whatever it is, because like there's no part of Candyman 1992, like Daniel Robitaille, Tony Todd story that had anything to do with candy with razor blades in it. That was all part of the new guys. So I loved that aspect of the new movie, how they found something, or like Jordan Peele. Did Nia DaCosta write the movie with him, or did she just direct?
I believe she just directed, but I can double check.
But but just the fact that they watched that movie, they watched this movie, the original one, and just saw that, and just like, there's something that's just kind of there. It's just sort of like lore, but it's just sort of hanging around. It doesn't have anything to do with anything. Let's take that and then make it part of the new movie and like connect it in a way that now when you go back and you watch 1992 Candyman, you see that and you're just like, oh wow, like that's a completely different Candyman. It's a completely different story. And
just as a footnote, I want to correct what I just said. Nia DaCosta collaborated on the screenplay with Wynn Rosenfeld and Jordan Peele. They're the three people credited as screenplay by, and then of course Bernard Rose and Clive Barker get credited for the original on the
all deserved
2021 film.
All deserved.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And I have a question for you, actually, in light of everything that you're bringing up, because I know you took issue or were given pause by some of the logic within Hellraiser. We discussed that. We covered that on that pod. How was the logic of the movie? Because it sounds like even when things may not necessarily kind of add up, it seems like it didn't really affect you in any kind of way that gave you pause.
I need a little bit more context, like specifically what is it about Hellraiser, and what is it maybe you're intimating about Candyman?
Well, I remember just kind of like professing about dream logic in in Hellraiser. Right. Like you were just kind of like it doesn't make sense. I don't remember exactly what the example was, but you were I just remember you like taking issue with something and me going like, but dream logic, Zach, I think was it the fact that Julia was... It's a fairy tale.
Julia was stabbed in the stairwell and then she ended up on the mattress?
That was one of them. There were a few times that like we were talking about things that don't quite add up, and I was just kind of like, yeah, but it just adds to like the fairy tale aspect of it.
I mean, I think it's maybe like I'll accept
symbology.
Yeah, I'll accept like hell logic, because once like the gate is open and the Cenobites are kind of like moving back and forth, there is no like there are no rules. Like things change, things are magical, like people move around, like Jason Voorhees of just like warping everywhere, like we see with Candyman.
He is Hell's assassin. Yeah, according to Jason Goes to Hell, he is Hell's assassin.
So what? What? Okay, but yeah, specifically, what in Candyman do you think is illogical, or do you think I might think?
No, not illogical, but I mean, you like it's getting late and my memory's going crazy. That's but no, just like you were pointing out some like things that I don't know if I'd call them inconsistencies or anything like that, but just things about just, I don't know, I guess about the progression of the movie. Like, did you find it flowed in a way that like you could get on board with as far as the logic? I mean, that's all I want.
Okay, yeah, I can't really speak to the logic, but I think what my issues were, which aren't even like really big issues with Hellraiser, was just the fact that I felt there was a lot of repetitive scenes where just like things could have been just to be a little leaner. They could have condensed things rather than just have like Julia like leave and come back to like go to the bathroom and clean up and then come back and then get blood on her again and then go clean up, like shit like that. I actually think I was noticing in Candyman that it flows very well, because I was trying to recognize like where are the act breaks here. Because I was doing a guest on Ryan's podcast a few weeks back when we were just talking about the Scream movies and sort of like where the kind of like acts separate in those. So I was just watching Candyman because it's really hard to tell, because the flow of the movie is so like there's always something happening, that it's not so much of just like this escalation and then de-escalation and that. It's just like the movie's constantly transformative in the way that you watch it, just because like the first bit or almost into like the first half, there is no Candyman. So like the first act really is just sort of like the thesis, like we're gathering information for the thesis. And I think that kind of culminates in whether it be Helen going into the bathroom there and getting assaulted by the gang members, or when she's finally in the parking garage, and that's when like Candyman appears before her and hypnotizes her, and she passes out and then wakes up in I just want to call her Rhonda. Rhonda's apartment. Yeah. She played Rhonda on Melrose Place season 1, but yes, Vanessa Williams, not Vanessa Williams, pageant queen, but
the singer.
But she wakes up there, and then like the movie kind of changes again, because now it's like, now you're being accused of all these murder, or just like accused of missing baby and killing the dog and all that. So it's just like Helen's life at that point is completely changed. So I kind of see like when the movie does kind of transition into, you know, kind of like what the story is now, it's so seamless in a way that it just like, it all feels like it's a constant story. Because I would say that the next big thing, or the next big turning point, which you already mentioned, is when she goes home and she finds, you know, Malibu Stacy painting the apartment.
Malibu Stacy! She will forever be Malibu Stacy to me now. Oh my God.
Yeah.
Brilliant. I love it.
Or Chicago Stacy, but and you mentioned something, because I didn't get a chance to say this, but you mentioned how there was always a part of Helen who subconsciously knew that Trevor was cheating on her, and this was not an ideal life. And I feel like there was never like a moment that I was more empathetic of Helen as a character than when she was running up to the apartment, like after she had left the hospital and she was wearing the nurse's clothing, because I remember just watching her run to the apartment. She's like, Trevor, please be home. Please be home. Because we've all been in situations like that where it's almost like a Hail Mary, and we're like going towards something that we know is like gonna be it's a complete failure, but we're just praying that, you know, whether it be a person or an event or a thing or whatever. So I just like, I see that, and never do I feel more empathetic of her, just knowing that it's just like, you know, that even if he's gonna be home, that whatever you're gonna find is not gonna be good. That it's almost like subconsciously she needed to go there to kind of, you know, she already knew like her life was fucked at that point. But it's just like she needed to kind of go there and see for herself the pink. That's you know, if I had to describe that pink of just like some, like there has some like vile term that just like life altering. It's just like, that's the color I associate with like, with transformation, or just like regression or something, or just like changing, but not for the better. But just like because that moment, like after she leaves and she's just sort of like wandering aimlessly, like over the bridge, and just like watching like the steam rise off of the river. Because that's the moment where, you know, that's when I would like segue into kind of like the final act of the movie, of just like her being like, I know what I've got to do now. You know, whether she wants to do it or not, like you were saying before, just like, this is the only way I can kind of amend everything that's been happening. That I feel like this is a perfect movie for me. Just, I think that if there's one flaw, maybe towards the end there, it does kind of get a little, you know, if I felt that there was a moment where it kind of lulls, maybe in those last little bits where, you know, she goes into like Candyman's lair, and then like, you know, the whole thing with the bees, even though I think that that's beautiful, like that whole kind of like interaction between them, and then going into the fire. And I did nod off a little, but in my defense, like I had been working all night, and I just like, I put the movie on at like 6 a.m. And I still had other shit to do, and I passed out.
You don't have to make a case.
But I just, no, because I've just been really bad for putting movies on and falling asleep and shit. But it's, I liked falling asleep to this movie, because you know, you still hear the incredible score that I woke up and like you hear the menu playing when it goes back to the movie's menu, and I'm just like, oh, it's still on, and I'm just like, oh no, it's just the menu on repeat. But I feel like it's from beginning to end, like it all flows really well, and that's what I love. I think that's the mark of just like, for me, like a perfect horror movie, like something that that is just able to, you know, get from point A to point B as seamlessly as possible. And for any little lull that I might find in this movie, I think that, you know, otherwise, like, this is a 5-star for me on Letterboxd. Go look me up.
Yeah, I think I'd have to agree. That said, like, just your comment about like act breaks and everything like that. I rarely watch movies and wonder about that kind of thing. Yeah. Although I'm more interested kind of like in movies that I find are antithetical to a 3-act structure. I don't mind it. Like, I'm not like down with the 3-act patriarchy, but I'm like, but I feel more like. I remember watching a movie, it was the first movie that Richard LaGravenese wrote and directed, called Living Out Loud, and he said on his commentary, which is one of my favorite commentaries to listen to, that he didn't want to adhere to a 3-act structure, even if it did kind of accidentally fall into something like that along the course of making the movie. What he wanted to look at were movements, just like what's going to get me from A to B, then what's going to get me from B to C. That was the structure. It was basically like this alphabet of movements forward from the point his protagonist begins to where she lands. And I get that, but what I really get, I'm so glad you brought up the significant turning point for Helen, like, you know, with the apartment and everything like that. Because another one for me that was really significant, that really hit this time, I think it always has, but I really was conscious of it this particular time, is her relationship with, is it Detective Valento? Is that his name? The detective who kind of takes her under his wing when she needs to stand in front of like the all of the men, you know, like
gallery.
I forget what it's called.
The police line.
The gallery, as they all stand there and say like Candyman, bitch, and she has to decipher like which. You're looking for Candyman, bitch. And she has to decipher which one of them is, you know, the one who assaulted her. And, you know, and she points her finger.
Oh, and the shot of her with that big fucking...
Oh, with the big eye. Oh, my God. Oh, so amazing. Yeah. But he is so incredibly compassionate toward her because in that moment she is a victim to him. And then after... the let's just call it an assault of Anne-Marie and the disappearance of her baby and the execution of the dog, and even, I mean, it is an assault because even though it's in defense, I just think, like, did you have to put, I mean, she's gonna kill you. Anne-Marie is going to kill you. She sees red because her baby is missing and the cradle is covered in blood, but who can blame her? You're not gonna de-escalate the situation by putting a cleaver into her shoulder or her neck. It's not like somewhere in between this area is where it goes, right?
Like, I think it was like her shoulder. No. There, you even see a scar when she shows up in the new movie. That was a nice touch there.
I love it. I did
love that continuity.
Like, yay! But anyway, so she's doing that thing, and then she has to sit, and she's even asking the people who she's surrounded by, like, where is Detective Valento? I have to talk to him. Like, he's a friend is basically the energy I'm getting from that. And then when he comes into the room, and she's still kind of talking to him like she's trying to put things together, and he's talking to her like, if she were paying any attention to him at all, I think she would recognize, like, oh, everything is shifted. I'm the suspect now, and he's looking at me like I am a potential murderer. And when she doesn't, there's one of the questions, I don't remember exactly what it is, but he asks her a question, and she won't answer it. So he screams it at her.
He slams down on the
like, do you understand? Yeah, do you understand? Or whatever, something like that. And she's like, and that's when the reality really sets in for me. That's a huge, like, Helen turning point for me, because she has gone from victim to suspect. Even though she herself doesn't doubt her own sanity, she very much believes she is a victim still. She knows for the first time in a way that is screaming in her face, nobody believes me. And it's remarkable. I don't know. And because
except
it's coming from a character who she had such, except for poor Bernadette, who, I mean, but who knows what that conversation would have been like if she hadn't, you know, gotten killed by Candyman, like whatever kind of confrontation they had.
Well, I think it was a good one because she brought her flowers, and I guess she had the slides too, or like the rest of the photographs that she recovered.
Right.
Because they were having a conversation. She's like, guess what? They're all good or whatever. I don't know if she brought more, because when you see the dead body, when it's got all the color drained out of it, when Helen comes out of the bedroom there, she's covered in all of the picture slides. So right. I don't know if that's just like she was bringing more, or those are the ones that were already in the apartment. But
if he's just kind of like, Candyman did it, there we go.
Yeah, just sprinkling them
My
all
work is done
on there. This is also I wanted to point out, kind of like, it's almost like going back to Halloween again, of just like a criticism in that movie of just like Laurie Strode throwing the knife down compared to Helen Lyle picking up the knife, and then just like allowing that to incriminate her. You know, when she's again like writhing on the kitchen floor with it, Trevor, like not even like moving, like a person in their right mind would be moving.
I mean, I think,
and then again with the cleaver.
Yeah, I think I can get behind the cleaver more so than the dropping of the knife, just because. Yeah. Even though I would never make that decision myself, because now my prints are. I mean, I think like a criminal every single day. I think I have a guilty conscience.
I think most Catholic, of us do, because I think
probably.
Because we have a conscience, and you know, whether you know right from like if you know right from wrong, like you're obviously going to think like a criminal, because you know right and you know wrong. So that's
especially when you're in heightened situations, like even being around like. Authority figures and stuff like that, I'd immediately, as a child, everything would just kind of like get sucked back in, you know, like a sea anemone, just like, no, nothing. I'm not guilty. I'm not even going to act guilty. That way, I won't incriminate myself, you know, that kind of thing. Yeah. But. So I don't think I'd ever pick up the butcher knife. But the fact that she wakes up covered in blood in a bathroom she doesn't recognize, and she hears screaming coming from another room, she doesn't know what she's walking into. Yeah. So I'm not defending it. I'm just saying, on a certain level, especially when you're groggy and you're just coming out of, you know, whatever kind of blackout you were in, maybe you're not going to make the most sensible choice. So I can get behind it a little bit more.
Yeah.
A little bit.
If I was Helen in that situation, and like woke up just like in that pool of blood or whatever, I would just like, and I heard everything, and then like I heard Anne-Marie, I would just like go back to sleep, or like pretend to be sleeping or whatever. Even though I know like I didn't do anything, but like when Anne-Marie comes in, because she's probably gonna start shaking Helen and just be like, "Where's my baby?" And she's like, and then that's where you just be like, "What happened?" I mean, like, you're being honest, but at least you're being smart about it, just being like, no, I don't know, I just kind of like woke up here, because at least she can go to the police and you know, present the case of I was drugged or hypnotized or whatever, and I ended up here. I had nothing to do with this, because, you know, that's when they're not going to treat you like a criminal, because you didn't pick up a cleaver, you didn't attack someone with it. And right, I feel that like Anne-Marie would be less likely to assault Helen if she was already kind of like unconscious on the ground. Sort of, I mean, she might beat her awake, but, you know, if it's, you know, if you're not reacting to someone in a physical way, and you're just kind of like laying there, you know, they're probably going to be less likely to do anything, because it's a passive position. Okay.
Maybe.
I mean, it just. Maybe. I mean, yeah.
I honestly don't know what I would do.
Yeah.
I have no
but
idea.
I think that would be me. I'd just be okay. I'm going to continue like pretending to be passed out.
Awesome.
And then when the police do arrive, I'm just going to be like, I seriously don't know what happened. That when you go to the precinct, and they, you know, if they book you for anything, if they do, they just be like, well, I mean, you know, even if you're not a suspect, you know, like you could at least be downgraded to a material witness, or, you know, something, just like because you were there. So I don't know. I think that, again, like, that's just Helen sort of that innate curiosity about her that kind of brings her to where she is in the story already because of her destiny. That's just the thing that like precipitated her to like get up there and grab the knife. It's almost like she was like a puppet or like a marionette, and Candyman was like up there just moving her around and being like, now you're gonna pick up the cleaver and you're gonna strike her in the shoulder, and like, don't forget to lift up your left boob, and you know.
But see, that's another thing that like would have been fascinating, like, or would be fascinating in another sequel, is if we could see somebody while they're blacked out, what does that look like? You know,
Yeah.
like while a Candyman is puppeteering you. Like I'd be interested in.
I mean,
seeing
even if
somebody
it
else,
was
you know,
like if that was through her body, because it like from what, as far as I can discern of what we see, Helen didn't murder Bernadette. That was Candyman who was standing there. That would be the case to be made. You know, like I was saying before, like if Helen hadn't been in the institution for an entire month, that, you know, very well she could have all been doing it herself and not known about it. So, you know, because there is a moment like when Trevor comes back and she's laying there with the knife. It's just like, but, you know, was it her? Is this an unreliable narrator situation? So I just assumed that, just given the information that's available to us, that Candyman did everything with his own corporeal, because he's a ghost, but he can obviously touch that. Like he bursts through the cabinet,
obviously,
and does stuff. He takes a baby, he's like lifted it up and brought it places. So yeah, I don't think that Helen would be like puppeted. I just mean more like psychologically, of just like she's getting messages they're telling her, do this and do that, because that's right. You know, she has a destiny to fulfill.
I just like to see it.
Yeah. Yeah, no, but, I get it. Maybe that can be like the end credits. They can do like a Wild Things,
like a behind the scenes.
Yeah. Just show us all the things.
Here's what you missed.
Yeah. I mean, that's
like
what I want to see.
Camera.
That's what I want to see them do in Scream movies at the end credits, of just to show like who killed who. Of just like in the most mundane way possible. It's just like, you know, you could have had that in the first movie with like Billy and Stu, and just being like, okay, now I'm gonna go stand over there, and you're like, do you remember the plan? He's like, yeah, I think so, and and smacks him or whatever. It's just like, do you remember, holding the knife to him, like, do you remember the fucking plan? You know, like that's what we need to see. We need more like. That should be the end credits of every movie, of just like the deleted material, you know.
I never speculated so much about who kills who in any movie until I met you, Zach Cherry. and now I definitely I still don't think about it to the extent that you do. You are the king, but I dip in more so than I did before.
And you are my loyal jester subject.
Oh, jester. Oh, great.
Peasant.
Jesus Christ.
You are the people.
All right. I knew I made a mistake calling you a king.
Just
all right. Let's
feed the ego.
Backtrack. But okay, speaking of kingly though, just one more thing I wanted to say about Tony Todd and his performance. Can I just say, I mean, we especially in light of the two most recent installments, because as of this recording, Halloween Ends has not been released yet. So seeing Halloween 2018 and Halloween Kills, how many times I looked at Michael Myers in those incarnations and thought, what a fucking asshole. I watched Candyman 1992, and something about Tony Todd's portrayal, just the regality with which he carries himself, and the way he romances, like the way he is in his own sense a Dracula, if he is any like classic universal monster, that's who it is. And with the seduction and with the softness, you know, and even kind of like a slightly, I don't know about lonely streak, but I mean, a craving human companionship, perhaps, streak. Like, would love to just kind of like align with people and merge with them, and So, okay, there's something about all of that kind of makes me not question anything he does. I never think, what an asshole, he shouldn't be doing that. I'm always just kind of like, don't make him mad. You know, I fall into full victim mode. Yeah. And I'm just kind of like, wow, I better not. Because, I mean, if he, honestly, like hypnosis or no hypnosis or whatever it is you want to call the thrall, you know, that he puts over Helen and glamour. Arguably over, over anybody. Whether that's the thing or whether it's just him, I can't see myself fighting him.
Yeah.
I really can't. I think I'd just be like Helen, just kind of the only thing I think might kind of like push up against is just with my words, like the way he asks her, "What are you afraid of? The pain or the what?" I don't even remember what the question is, but he asks her the pain or the this, and is it the pain or the pleasure, or she's just kind of like,
that's more of a
I just remember her response. No, I just remember her response is just both, and I'm just like, yeah, me too. I'm like, I'm completely surrendering, but I'm scared, and that would be me fighting back. That'd be me fighting Candyman. Can't say that about many other movie monsters or slashers.
Michael is a fucking asshole in the new ones, but I think maybe a lot of just what makes Candyman like the opposite of that is the fact that I feel like a lot of the like you don't really get empathy from any of the characters in the movie in Candyman other than Helen and Candyman arguably. So like all of the victims, like I mean as sympathetic as we are of Bernadette, she is not really a believer in anything. She's sort of like, she's this skeptic. She's not on, I mean, even though Helen is skeptical herself at the beginning, but she doesn't want to go along with everything. She's the one that wants to turn the car around. She's not really an active player when they do get to Cabrini. Like Helen is doing everything. So Bernadette's just kind of like, she's just kind of there,
cautious.
The psychiatrist, he's obviously doubting Helen. So we're not like, not that these are bad people that are getting killed throughout the movie, but like we don't like feel for that. Like we don't get their perspective enough or just like understand them to really give a shit. Whereas I feel like with Halloween, like the new Halloween movies, like we spend time with these victims, as much as we may or may not like them, like like the Big and Little John or whatever, we spend a significant portion of time in their house with them while they're just talking about stupid shit that when Michael comes in there, who hasn't said a fucking word in the last 56 years or however long it's been, like I don't know what your deal is. Why are you so mad, bro? Like you're gonna be a fucking asshole. So I think that just the fact that the story of Candyman, just like the movie and the performances brought to it and the way that it's written and directed, that they give so much life to these two characters that I don't like. I'm as much as I'm on board with Helen's journey, like I there for Candyman as well. This is his franchise too.
I'm so glad that you said that, because you're making me rethink my original. It wasn't a theory because it was not developed. I guess a hypothesis or question, even that what's being punished here, if it's being punished at all. If it is punishment, if punishment has a place in Candyman, maybe what's being punished is skepticism itself. Whether you're one of the victims he kills and guts and uses as a sacrifice, as a means on his path toward rebirth, as it were, or whether it's Helen with her own skepticism and her own kind of invincibility that I talked about earlier, like this bravado that she had, which is in and of itself, like if you have a bravado about something, it means you're not intimidated by it. It means that you feel no threat, so you're probably skeptical about like the effect it might have on you in the long run, and that gets, if anything gets punished, that's what it is. So okay, glad we had this talk.
I'm glad we did too. Anything else that you want to say about Candyman before we cherry pick?
Not off the top of my head.
I did want to say, which I probably should have brought up earlier, just that I don't remember when I first saw Candyman, but I remember when it first came out. I remember seeing promotional material for it, or it might have even been like on like pay-per-view. Do you remember that? Yes. Back in the day, it's probably still around somewhere. But because I was
maybe
because I was I was visiting relatives, when this movie came out, and I think it was like the following summer after, and I just remember seeing a lot of like Candyman stuff on TV, and it was the two scenes that like stood out to me, that always like terrified me. And the first one was when Helen is in the parking garage when he first appears before her, and just like the low soft like Helen. And that freaks me out. But then there's also the scene in her apartment later when the hook bursts through the cabinet door, and then she runs out into the hallway, and like Jason Voorhees, teleporting, back and forth. So I remember seeing that, and I just remember being terrified of Candyman for the longest time before I'd ever even seen the movie. And I remember like, being at summer camp, and like people, like other kids talking about Candyman, and just like he was a real urban legend. And I was just like, is this like a real thing? And people would be like, yeah, he's based on a true story of just, because that would be circulated around there. That'd be like the perfect like marketing for, like an urban legend type movie like this, like say like this is based on true events or things like that.
And I screened this, I think right at the beginning not right at the beginning, when we were kind of a few months into the lockdown in 2020 for my mother, because she was getting tired of the content she had been consuming, and she was ready for some horror, and she had avoided horror for many years prior to that. Yeah. But so I asked her, had she ever seen Candyman? She's like, no, but I remember the legend. I'm like, you remember So she's like, yeah, we used to tell stories about it in the playground. I'm like, we used to tell stories about it in the playground, but I just thought it was because of this movie or because of the short story. I didn't know that like it was an actual like legend. She's like, oh yeah, back when I was a little in the 50s, we'd talk about Candyman, and I didn't want to look at any reflective surface and say his name. And I'm like, do you want to see it? It's a really good movie. It's got Virginia Madsen in it. She's like, oh, that's... So I picked her interest. She watched it. And out of all the movies I showed her that particular year, it was the only one that scared her in a way that made her say, like, I'm never seeing it again. I'm like, really? But when I first had exposure to it, it wasn't seeing the movie. It was seeing the commercials advertising it, and the trailers on like the VHS tapes, before the movie and everything like showing. And I remember the two things about the trailers that scared me. The first one was just seeing what's her name, the blonde girl in the beginning when she looks into the mirror and says Candyman the fifth time, and then all of a sudden, like,
Ted Raimi's girlfriend,
when the light goes out and everything, and then there he is, and that alone. Like, because I knew about Bloody Mary prior to that. I did not know about Candyman, and then afterwards it became a thing. That's why I always thought it was just the movie. Yeah. But Bloody Mary, it was always like scary because it might be true or something like that, but it wasn't something that I thought about a whole lot. I thought about Candyman for some reason. I don't know why. Maybe because Bloody Mary only lived in my imagination. I never had a manifestation or anything like that. So I didn't have anything to kind of like, in my imagination, she wasn't that scary. But then like just seeing this, I think it was the noise, the when he scared the shit out of me.
I don't know, like when your mom says that she talked about that as a little on playgrounds. Like I don't know, like if that, and not that I'm like questioning her or anything, but like this is like the character is invented by Clive Barker. So, I mean, could this just be a confusion of Bloody Mary or another figure?
No, she knows Bloody Mary too, and she knows the Kukui, and she knows La Llorona, and she's got all kinds of...
like that's because that's the thing with urban legends. It's just like they go back, nobody knows any exact start date unless you get like Purcell in here, and he'll be like, oh, yes, well, Candyman first, appeared in 1890, and he was the son of a slave, and yada, yada, yada.
No, I don't think there was a backstory. I think maybe the backstory might have been what was crafted by Clive Barker around the legend. Okay. I think it was just about the saying his name 5 times in the mirror, and then he comes and he kills you, which is, Yeah.
Okay, so Clive just kind of like took an amalgamation of like different urban legends and formed them into that. Okay, that makes a lot of sense. I also think it's funny that it took like a pandemic for your mom to be like, well, the world is scary enough. I guess I can start watching horror movies.
Exactly, or just like, oh, I'm bored with everything I've seen. I've seen it. I've seen everything twice. Show me something I haven't seen, and then. But I mean, I got some really, really good horror in there too. Like, but the second thing that scared me was just him disappearing in the through the window flying out backwards, because I'd never seen anything like that, and I didn't.
That's like the Dracula equivalent of like just bursting into baths, just go flying out of a window.
Yeah, right. I mean, you'd think you'd get scared if like he came bursting through the wall like the Kool-Aid guy or something like that, but no, watching him exit just like again, it's supernatural. There's no real explanation for it. It's just kind of like defies, I mean, it's exactly the laws of physics, but it seems to defy them, given he was standing right there, and then he just backed out of the wall at kind of a diagonal swinging, Scared the shit out of me. And for a long time I didn't want to watch the movie because it looked legitimately frightening, and I wasn't ready to be that scared whenever. Well, I think when I was 12 years old seeing that movie, I like being grossed out, and that was it.
I mean, I'll just say this before we get to the cherry pickers, that I think that this works on a level of scary, and just like kind of like the same way that Hellraiser works, in just terms of like what Clive Barker does is like he explores like the unknown of just things that could possibly, it's just like what we kind of fill the blanks in, like what our own headcanon is per se, of just like, why did that person disappear without a trace? Why were they never found again? Like, why did that baby go missing and we never knew? And it's just sort of like, well, here's the story behind that as to why that those are the urban legends that like, make you think like, oh wow, that could happen. Like, I haven't done this in a long time, but I always used to go on YouTube and just like watch like videos of like 5 disturbing cases, like unsolved cases and things like that. And they'd just be like, this person like mysteriously died in their house. One day they were like complaining of, to their friends that they had been cursed by a witch or whatever. And then like within a week later, they were dead when there was no signs of like entry or breaking in. And like, that makes me think like, wow, was there like a fucking, like, did Clive Barker invent this story? So that's what's scary about them, because it's like, I look at this shit and it's just like, this is the unexplained. Like, these are the stories that fill the void of just what we don't know. And that's why they're scary to me.
You're scaring me, and it's late. Ooh. I need to sleep tonight, Okay,
all right,
Glenn.
Let's Glenn.
From Nightmare on Elm Street, because he's the one who goes to Nancy.
Yeah. Let's get to the cherry pick.
It's not like we kill people on purpose.
All right. Cherry on top. I'm throwing Malibu Stacy in there as a contender. I'm kidding.
No. Thank God.
I love her. Fucking like she's awful, but in like the best way possible. But no, she is not cherry on top.
No, she's not cherry on top material. Yeah. So who do you nominate?
I'm gonna say Helen.
For reals. Okay, I want to put Daniel Robitaille, aka Candyman, as a contender because I think he deserves.
Well, I don't think that it would be Daniel Robitaille. It would just be Candyman, because we don't see Daniel Robitaille in this. All right. Okay, Candyman it is.
Oh, really? Wow.
Oh, were we just doing... I don't know. I just don't want to spend too much time on this.
No, I just like, okay, sure. Okay, Candyman. I mean, okay, no fight tonight. Cool.
Well, no, because the cherry on top is not about being adversarial. It's about being collaborative. So, I mean, if you...
Okay. But even that's just like, all right, uncle. Like, that. That's great. Okay.
Is that what you're good? I mean, out of those two, is that what you want?
Yes.
Okay, then that's what it is. Yeah. Anyway... This is where we can fight now with the cherry picker. Because last week, we asked you in Hellraiser who deserves to die the most. And I nominated Uncle Frank. Mm-hmm. You nominated Moving Man 2. And on Patreon, Instagram, and YouTube, the total vote was 576 for Uncle Frank versus 117 for Moving Man 2.
Thanks, 117 of you. That's really cool.
I love how like glass half full you are. And then like, more people should have voted for me.
No, 117. That's a lot of people. If they were all just to come up and just say hi, I'd be overwhelmed. So,
Okay. Let's see what the comments were. Rachel Sullivan says Uncle Frank is pretty much a completely despicable character, so yeah, him.
Can't argue with that.
No, you can't. Marianne Jackson says Uncle Frank, no question.
Nice.
Whale Wolf says, you'll love this. Moving Man was hot. He must survive.
All right, we all got our things. I don't share that.
Howl Puns says, gotta go with Uncle Frank. I mean, you summon sex demons and don't expect it to go badly. Girl, please. Also, he's the type of guy who's into BDSM but doesn't use safe words. Honestly, having his skin removed is just karma. And Moving Guy was really hot.
Oh my God! Wait, okay. I'm just gonna put this out there. So was Uncle Frank. I mean, everything that you just read is true about him. Yeah. But come on, if you had to choose between Moving Man 2 or Uncle Frank just on aesthetic alone, that should be another like mini picker.
We don't add another picker. We don't need any more pickers.
Go on, then.
And then Grant Dempsey says, Jesus wept. Uncle Frank, yep. And what a death it was. Neon Icon asks, can you really even compare the two? I think so.
I think so.
Yeah. Heather Utterback says, this is a hard one, guys. I would have picked Julia, who was our cherry on top, but Frank is my vote. Moving Guy is a pig, but Frank is disgusting. I noticed that Moving Man 2 is in the sequel. He's in Hellbound.
Oh, I forgot.
I don't want to, and I'm pretty sure it's the same character, and I don't want to say anything because it might be a spoiler. So, you know, if we get to Hellbound, Hellraiser 2 one day, maybe we'll bring that up. But
ooh, all right.
But yeah, so for Candyman. Fuck. Well, first, I feel like I need to thank the voters, but no. I am not prepared for this. I feel like I want to pick Trevor. I want to pick Trevor, but I mean, just like,
okay,
I'm not going to. I'm gonna pick. I'm intrigued. Oh my gosh. You know what? I'm just going to pick Purcell again. Because, you know, we did this on the old podcast, and that was my choice. The only other alternative I would have voted for or nominated was the gang leader in the bathroom. But he's not memorable enough to me. Like, I'm just keeping it fun. I'm going with Professor Purcell.
Okay.
Yeah.
And no case beyond that.
Just the hoity-toity, know-it-all, academic posturing. That's it. I don't. I'd have to watch that scene again to find more things. I don't need to make a point because these polls are out there before the fucking podcast.
That's true.
Is released anyway, so it doesn't. By the time people have voted, nobody has taken our points into question. So
absolutely,
you have the nomination. You do with it as you will. I'm sure I'm not going to win this one, but I just wanted to throw it out there because I'm being authentic to me.
Good for you.
Yeah.
That's what I do. Conscience and heart. But sidebar, anybody who's listening and not watching, you should check out on YouTube whatever time signature it is where Zach says hoity-toity because he did like a little shimmy and I liked it.
Did I?
He's like hoity-toity. It was great. Okay, I'm nominating Malibu Stacy. Just because again, entertaining as fuck. Like, I love watching her suffer, but that's the thing. I love watching her suffer. I want to see her die. And actually, you know what? It gave me a thought. as the end credits were rolling, I wouldn't have had a problem. I like the ending the way it is, but I would not have had a problem if the roles had been reversed and if Stacy had been the one to be killed, because then Helen could get the rush of killing the infidel, but she could the other woman, but she could also frame her husband for killing her and make him suffer in a more long-term way. And I feel like of the two, he deserves to suffer in life, and Stacy deserves to be executed more so. That's how I feel about it.
See, I don't,
because he's the betrayer. He's the one who betrayed her. And Stacy, I mean, she didn't owe her anything outside of just being like a decent person, and she failed.
I mean, I feel that you could put your argument one way or another. I think that it makes more sense thematically with how it did, because Trevor's fate was very much, I mean, like, just going back to Clive Barkerisms of the flesh, you know, it just like that was their relationship of just, you know, being intertwined through their love of just, you know, like what essentially what their love was just sex, obviously, if that's all that Trevor, you know, saw in her. And then once she got too old, you know, he went on to something younger. So it makes sense that, you know, he would be the one to get brutally butchered by her, because it was all about penetration, you know. And Stacy, but let me just say, Stacy is, you know, she's wants to be with Trevor, whatever his name is, Trevor. That now she gets to live with that. If she is convicted of his murder, which I hope she is, she's basically tied to that for life. So I feel like those are the just rewards for the, you know, the punishment fits the crime, we'll say.
I think I'm also just like accessing my own.
I think you're just picking Malibu Stacy because I said that.
No, you know. No, not everything is about you, Zach Cherry. No, it's about me and my own thirst for vengeance. The title of the
podcast is The Cherry Picker. I'll just put that out there.
Exactly. The podcast is about you for sure, but the my decision making does not revolve around the son of Zach Cherry, the S-U-N that is Zach Cherry. But no, it's just because if I could talk about myself for 30 seconds.
Please do.
My own relationship with vengeance. If I think about, like, you know, anybody who I was in even like a quasi relationship with who, you know, introduced infidelity into the equation, who would I want to kill and who would I want to suffer in the long term? I want to eliminate the person, the infidel, but I want the person who betrayed me to suffer longer. I want a more long-term sense of pain for them, because I feel like death in and of itself is a relief and a release and a transition, and I don't want that for somebody who's done me wrong if I'm killing someone, which I'm not. So I've never killed anybody. I just want to make that clear to everybody. So that's
like
vote
lean
your
in and look
into
into the
heart.
camera.
I'm making my appeal.
Yeah. And you can do that by going on the YouTube community section. That's for the Cherry Picker. You can also vote on Instagram. Our account there is @thecherrypickerpod. And you can also vote on Patreon. We've got a poll there. I just want to welcome some new Patreon supporters, if I may. But welcome aboard to Tyra, Michael Green, Samantha Torres, Nicole Brandstetter, and Aaron. Welcome. Thank you.
Applause for everybody.
And I also want to thank Andre Felix, who is our podcast editor. Yay! And if you guys do want to support us on Patreon, you will get these episodes early. They come out like the Thursday or Friday before. And also, if you support us on the Freddy Krueger tier, you get a bonus podcast episode every month. The last two, we did Buffy Season 1 and Season 2, where we also ranked them. But this month, we've got a Halloween special. I think we've already announced what it is in a former podcast, but it's a surprise now. You'll have to go back and look. I just called it the Halloween spooky season special or something
spooky,
trite
spooky
like
stuff.
Spooky season special. Yeah, it's gonna be spooky.
Yeah, it is.
Yeah.
Jack Cherry.
Thank you.
And Cordell.
Is that your Mason Verger?
I think Mason Verger. It wasn't originally.
No.
It was, but then it turned into.
It just
him.
turned. We will do a Silence of the Lambs and separately a Hannibal podcast at some point soon. We've got it. But
Fab.
yeah. So there's that. Also, just a reminder, if you're new to the Cherry Picker, that if you are watching this on YouTube, you can listen to our episodes. The link for the RSS feed is in the descriptions down below. And if you are listening to this and for some reason you want to see us shimmy and shake or whatever, the YouTube channel, again, is called The Cherry Picker, like the podcast. So pretty easy to find. Social media, where can they find you?
You can find me on Instagram at Edward is Truth, one word, traditional spelling. You can also find very old videos of me reacting now. I mean, they're months old. It's not that old, but videos of me reacting to movies. I have more in the can. I just got to edit them. I'm so sorry. I'm sorry. My life is so... Oh, this has become an apology now. Yeah. It went from appeal to apology. But anyway, yeah, Edward is Truth on YouTube as well. Yeah. Feel free to subscribe and like and comment and even let me know what you'd like to watch me react to, because, you know, why not? Because
it might happen. It might not, you know.
It might happen.
Editing is hard. It's hard work.
It's just time consuming, you know. Just takes all the time in the world.
Yeah.
So,
and if you have a full-time job, so I understand. And you can find me on Instagram at retrobitchface. I'm on Twitter at ZachCherry8, and also my main YouTube channel, Zach Cherry, with a K, just in case. I don't know. And that's all traditional spelling. I don't know what non-traditional is, but
ZAC. Like Efron.
No, he's just a C. He's just one C.
Yeah, I know.
Oh.
ZAC.
Oh, okay. No, I thought you said ZACK.
No, he's ZAC.
Okay.
Zac Efron is ZAC. And
Yeah.
Efron is even non-traditional spelling because it's EFRON and not EPHRON, which is the traditional Efron. Nora Ephron.
I have no idea. Yeah. I saw that he's still like acting and stuff, so good for him. I thought he just kind of disappeared.
Yeah, didn't he do a thriller or something? Maybe we'll talk about it.
I don't know. I know he played didn't he play like Ted Bundy in something?
Oh, Jesus. Yeah, not interested. So not interested in his Ted Bundy, but whatever.
Anyway.
Seems like a nice guy.
Anyway, do you know what we got going on next week?
I did. Wait, it's fuck. Okay, wait. Do charades. Like, is it? Zach was like waving his hands and is it happy? Death Day?
Yeah.
All right, cool.
Happy Death Day,
folks.
Happy Death Day.
I didn't remember, but I guessed correctly.
That's after I charaded it. For
yeah.
I blew out candles for anyone who's listening. Fake candles. But that'll be next week.
Mime.
So you can check us out then. Anyway, thank you for watching. Thank you for listening, and we will be right back.